Right, lovely. Okay, so let's kick off then. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks very much for making the time, and welcome to the webinar today. You've actually been bowled over by the interest in this event. I think it's always nice to get the community together to share loads of ideas. So thanks very much for coming along. My name is Richard Angus, Head of Education Partnerships at MyTutor. And I suppose what we're here to talk about today, I guess, relates to the impact of COVID on disadvantaged students, both in terms of their academic attainment, so how they're doing and ultimately progress into HE, but also in terms of the confidence and aspiration to go on and do it. We're also going to touch on how the crisis is transforming the way that universities are planning and delivering on outreach activities, particularly in quite a new online-centric world, at least in the short term. We'll hear from two fantastic speakers as well, which I'll just show you. Oh no, that's not the right one. Is it the next one? There you go. We'll hear from two fantastic guest speakers as well, who are going to bring their perspective to the issues. That's Joe Bowers and Natalie Freislich-Mills. I can't believe I did that. I even asked how to pronounce it beforehand, Natalie. What a shame. Who'll bring their perspective to the issue and share some practical plans on narrowing the attainment gap and supporting target students from September. So hopefully you can take away some concrete ideas and some insights. So a couple of housekeeping bits. If there's any questions you'd like to submit, you can type your question into the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of the Zoom window, and we'll put those questions to the panelists at the end of both of their presentations. You can also upvote people's questions. If there's a question you really like, do upvote it. It's the best way for it to get up the list. And then just before we get started, a brief bit on us. So if you haven't heard of MyTutor already, we are the leading one-to-one online tuition provider in the UK. So we work with about 500 schools, universities, and Uni Connect programs now to open up access to personalised tuition for students who couldn't ordinarily afford it. So particularly in places like Outreach and the Uni Connect program. So universities work with us as a strand of their outreach and WP efforts. So focusing on subject-specific attainment support. Maths, English, and science tend to be the main ones, but we do a few others. And the whole point is around building confidence and grades, but also helping to build their aspiration, as all of our tutors are already studying at university. So that's us in a nutshell. I think it brings us nicely to introduce our first guest speaker, Joe Bowers from the University of Warwick, one of our partner unis. So I'll let Joe speak in a bit more depth about the approach at Warwick, but they're doing loads of really great activities, and obviously we're delighted to be a small part of that. So, Joe, do you have a screen you'd like to share?
I do.
Fabulous.
There we go.
There you go.
Again. Let's see if we can get the right one. Can we see that, everybody? Hopefully you can see my screen now. Thanks ever so much. So yeah, my name's Joe Bowers. I work at the University of Warwick, where I am Widening Access Officer, and I generally work with, one of my main focuses is our kind of key widening access program called Warwick Scholars, which is a regional access program. And so today I'm going to kind of talk about how, I will sort of mention how we've worked with MyTutor, but also I want to talk generally how we've kind of tried to develop our online outreach in this kind of strange times that we're living in. So essentially the key questions that we need to ask ourselves are these three. So how can we adapt our existing outreach to go online? What strategies can we use to mitigate the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on our most disadvantaged students? We know there's going to be an impact there. What can we do to support them? And then how can we support academic attainment specifically over the summer and into the new academic year? So it fits quite nicely within my remit, because our the Warwick Scholars programme that I run, one of the key focuses of that is academic attainment, enabling students to get into Warwick if that's what they want to do, of course. So just to give a little bit of context around the way that we work at Warwick and how that has affected how easily and quickly and how we've managed to move some things online. We tend to work in a very programmatic way at Warwick, so we have lots of sustained interventions and lots of programs that have a core kind of cohort of students, which doesn't actually lend itself easily to moving online quickly. Whereas obviously other kind of ways of doing outreach where it might be more light touch but frequent activities in schools, for example, it might be easier to move those online, but actually a lot of our work is about one-to-one support and kind of a community building, I suppose, which brings us on to, we do run in a kind of life cycle approach. So we look, if we take Warwick Scholars as an example of that, so the part that I run is the access part, and then when students have come to Warwick, then they continue to be a Warwick Scholar, and that they have support throughout their degree from my colleague Andy, who they get kind of increased access to various things at the university that support them to make sure that they're making the most of their opportunities, basically. But what that means is we have a real focus on building a community from the start. So lots of work there is done on a kind of ad hoc basis with individuals. So again, that doesn't lend itself quickly and easily to just putting that online. And the other thing is, probably unsurprising, as a Russell Group research intensive university, we like our outreach work to be quite research led. So we haven't perhaps moved as quickly as some other universities to put things online. But that's because we want to make sure that what we're doing is done well and that it meets the needs of the students we're working with. So we kind of use this theory of change approach, where we look at what are we trying to achieve, where's the evidence for what could help us to achieve that, and then we try to develop activities to meet those objectives, basically. So that's kind of a little bit of context, and I just thought, you don't need to read this, it's tiny, I aware, but this just kind of gives you an idea of the breadth of activity that we normally run. So this is kind of our snake of opportunity, I suppose you might call it. It takes us all the way through our primary work to pre-16 into post-16, and then access, transition and support throughout the degree. So we do a lot of work, and we have to kind of decide what can we move online successfully and what needs to wait until it can be done in a different way. So in terms of what have we done to move our outreach online, so things like we've had one-to-one drop-in sessions, obviously via Zoom or Teams, and online coffee catch-ups with our programme students, especially our undergraduate groups. So as I mentioned, we have an undergraduate cohort of Warwick Scholars, and we also have what we call the WP Student Network. So they, in the old normal world, they would meet up kind of termly to discuss anything really, but it's kind of like to build this community of students who identify as WP, and they've continued to have kind of online catch-ups to make sure that those students feel like they're still part of the Warwick community, that the support is still there for them, that kind of thing. So we've run quite a few of those, and we haven't tended to run a lot of one-to-one kind of online drop-in sessions with like our pre-entry groups of post-16 or pre-16 for various reasons, like safeguarding being the main one. But we do have a lot of contact with our program, what we call our program students, via email and things like that. And we've also got a live chat system that we kind of run sometimes with specific focuses. But a lot of our work is about those kind of informal ad hoc bits of support. So those aren't things that we can put on as an event, basically. In terms of our summer school, so normally we'd run, I think, about 5 summer schools, and obviously this year we can't, it might even be more than that, this year we can't run them on campus. And so we've kind of blended, it's all moved online, but we've blended it with a pre-recorded and live summer school sessions. So particularly for our post-16 summer school, which is done in partnership with the Sutton Trust Summer School, that's got lots of pre-recorded lectures so that students can access it when they're able to, intermingled with kind of live sessions to try to continue to develop that social aspect that is so key from a summer school. So that's what we've done there. For the pre-16 summer school, so we have a year 10 summer school that's for local students. Again, we actually asked the schools about what kind of level of access of these students likely to have to online to take part in online activities throughout the summer, and in response to kind of the responses we got to kind of a real quick survey from that, we've actually taken that almost entirely offline in a way. There won't be any live sessions in that. We might have a live chat towards the end for questions and answers that have come up over the weeks, but what we're going to do instead is to implement a weekly challenge that will actually take them throughout the summer. So instead of it being a kind of 2 or 3 day intense activity, we're going to go for a weekly challenge each week, that and we've kind of branded it as Passport to Your Future. So each week focuses on a skill or a piece of knowledge that they need to think about in relation to going into year 11. So there's some things in study skills in there, there's things about choosing your A-level subjects. We're starting to introduce the concept of different pathways at post 16 and after post 16. So lots of different things, but yeah, essentially we've taken that. It's not live in any sense. It's a series of activities that they can engage with in their own time. So they kind of have a week to do a challenge essentially. Because one key thing we've found from our research with our the groups that we're working with is that actually the access to IT is intermittent, is probably the best word to use it. So it could be that lots of people in the household are using one device, for example. And what we've actually seen so far, we've only run it for kind of 2 weeks so far, I only just started, but we've actually seen that most of that work is getting done at a weekend, which probably lends credence to the idea that actually there's people at home using the technology during the week for work or other school and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what we've done for there. In addition, we've done some of the simpler things, if you like. The things that are more simple to put online are things like common workshops we've put online. So that's kind of in collaboration with our recruitment team, really. So those are things like making successful applications, introductions to Warwick, choosing courses, those sort of things. So those things are available online. Our student recruitment team have actually put this thing that they called Warwick at 1. So I think it was for about a month, every day at 1 o'clock, every working day at 1 o'clock, we'd have a student, a current undergraduate student, did a video on a particular topic. So it might have been about accommodation or a specific course or societies, something like that. So they'd put a short video on, and then they'd be available in a live chat afterwards, so that students can come and find out about that specific thing and then ask any questions that come up. So it's kind of just a way of opening the campus at a time where we obviously can't open it physically. And then we've got virtual open days, as have most universities, I think, now. But what we've done at Warwick is they are spanning over several days. So the first one of those is this week, actually. And what that means, again, is that students can access resources when they're able to access them. So most of those sessions are live, but they run kind of a couple of times, so they can make their own timetable and make sure that they're online when they need to be, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we've done so far in terms of moving our outreach online. And just to reiterate, I think one of the key things there is that a lot of it is accessible in a student's own time, not expecting them to be online for several hours and to have kind of unlimited internet access, because we know from what we've heard from students that some of them are using kind of data on phones and things like that, so actually having to download lots of videos is not something that they're going to be able to do for our WP students. So we've tried to make it so that it's as inclusive and accessible as we can make it, given that it essentially has to be online. So the second kind of key question was about how we're mitigating the impact of the whole situation on WP students. And some of these things are university-wide things that are happening, that they're not necessarily the WP team have come up with them, but actually WP is part of policy making at Warwick. So a lot of these decisions have been made with WP students in mind. So for example, we've got long-term laptop loans for undergraduate students who don't have that access. So we know that in our Warwick Scholars cohort, we've got students who normally would always use the computers in the library. Obviously they can't do that. Or they would borrow their housemate's laptop. Obviously they can't do that. So we've managed to have some long-term laptop loans for those students. The university itself has relaxed kind of evidence requirement for mitigating circumstances in terms of assessment and things like that, because we know that that WP learners in particular are likely to have more more situations that mean they can't engage with the online assessments and online learning, and but also they're not easily evidenced, so they have kind of relaxed the evidence requirements for that, and they've introduced a kind of self-certification policy for requesting extensions and things like that. So while those aren't WP specific, we're really pleased because we really think they're going to be really of benefit to WP students. As I said, we've had lots of keeping in touch catch-ups with our undergraduate groups. It's much easier for us to do those because there's already an ongoing relationship, and there's not the same question around safeguarding because they're all over 18, of course. So lots of those have been done on Zoom, Teams, various platforms. We've also liaised with teachers and parents regarding access for online learning, and from that, essentially what we've decided to do is planning for a blended approach so that students can engage in their own time, but also there will be some opportunities for them to kind of ask questions in a live sense. And where we've really had to, where there's no other option, we've gone down the route of posting out physical copies. So we're lucky enough to have one of the teams at the university is able to be on campus, one of like the print team, and they're able to post things out for us if we really need to, because the last thing we want is for people not to be able to engage at all with anything. So we can post out physical copies. So that's kind of what we've done to mitigate the impact on WP students, but it is obviously ongoing work, and I should have caveated at the beginning of the presentation, I'm not suggesting for a minute that anything that we've done so far is particularly groundbreaking or that exciting, but it's just we're just kind of working on it on an ongoing basis and kind of improving as we go. And actually that's one point that I wanted to make, is that in trying to be positive, we can actually look at opportunities here that are brought about by this situation, and that online outreach can reach more people, really, like can reach wider than kind of say the region. So a lot of our outreach that we do is very regional because we bring students onto campus. Well, taking that out of the question has meant that we can actually spread further, so we can actually reach more people. So there's lots of ways that outreach is likely to change, I think, and we can choose to see that as a positive or a negative, and I think we can find opportunities basically to make it better. So in terms of supporting attainment, we have got lots of departments have actually got on board with this. So for example, our physics department have started to run a journal club where they actually share a journal a week with offer holders or pre-entry students, but actually we can open that out to any student. So we've advertised that through our programs, through our social media and things like that, and they can actually, so they read a journal, like an actual physics journal, and then they talk about it. They can send their thoughts through via email to the academic colleague who's running that. So that's just getting students engaged, ready to kind of engage with that level of text. Our English department have put together a list of accessible texts, by which we mean they're free online. So there's no like financial barrier there. Statistics department have put welcome packages online. So there's one, I think they've done one about every 3 weeks or so, that kind of have like a statistics puzzle, and then some kind of hints, and then the solutions, and then links to kind of further reading and things like that. And the life sciences department have put together a reading list that's both fiction and non-fiction, that's been kind of curated by our academic colleagues there, that they're just things that students can be doing over the summer to kind of be ready when they get here in September. And I'm going to very briefly, because I think I'm running out of time, talk about how we've worked with MyTutor. So part of Warwick Scholars, as I said, it's focusing on attainment raising. So part of that is that actually the 100 Warwick Scholars that we've got, approximately 100, you know, people drop off and stuff like that, they've had tutoring for one of their A-level subjects since January. So they were having like a weekly tutoring session. Obviously, with the cancellation of exams, we quite quickly realised that students weren't going to engage, and that actually the purpose of these sessions had been lost. So we repurposed them with the help of MyTutor, who are very flexible, I must say, for our kind of crazy idea. So we really wanted to focus on transition knowledge and skills. So MyTutor were able to pair the majority of our Warwick scholars with tutors who are studying the same or a very similar course at Warwick. So that's Warwick students who are already tutors on MyTutor. They managed to make, I think it was about 70% of them have been managed to pair with somebody really relevant. And we asked our academic colleagues for kind of 3 to 6 key pieces of knowledge or skills that they should focus on in these sessions. And we made these sessions, instead of being weekly, we moved them to fortnightly, so that they run all the way pretty much until September. So what that means is that they're not under a lot of pressure. They've only got to find 1 hour every fortnight that they can get online. They're meeting up with a tutor who's studying the same subject as they're going to be studying, in the majority of cases who's at the university that they're planning to come to. And they're really focusing on the key areas that are going to make them successful in year 1 at Warwick. So that's really been helpful, because that's not something that's easy to come by. So that's been a really useful intervention. I've just got a couple of comments really from students. So we said that some of the students feel that being a Warwick Scholar has really prepared them not only for university but also with their A-levels, with the tutoring. We've got one that says that the lessons have been really useful and that they're making them all the more excited to start their journey with us. And the tutoring's been helpful, and kind of they're working on presentation and essay skills at the moment. And then we've got a comment from a tutor about one of our Warwick Scholars who said he's done particularly well in a STEP question, and that is certainly well set for year 1 at university. And hearing that from a tutor is incredibly empowering to our WP students, because they have done year 1 at that university and they know what it takes, and it's really bringing around that confidence of, oh, I am ready for this kind of level of study. So it's been really successful, I think, and the students have really found it useful, empowering, and it's very targeted. I must say the academic departments were a bit, I don't want to say scared, that's not the word. They were a bit unused to offering advice for pre-entry. I think they're used to the degree level study and not the A level study. But actually, again, to talk about the opportunity of this, if anything, these students are going to be more prepared than if they'd have just done their A levels, where there's often quite a big disconnect between A level content and the kind of way that A level's taught, and then when they get to degree, that's quite a jump in many respects. And so actually these students are going to be more prepared perhaps than some of their more advantaged peers, and perhaps than they would have been in a normal year. So we can look at the positives there. So I'm going to stop talking now because I think my time's up. But just in terms of what's next, basically nobody knows. We don't have a crystal ball. Who knows what's going to happen? But we're working on 3 potential scenarios where everything's online, or we blend online and offline, or 3, we might be back to face-to-face normality. I think the most likely thing, at least in the first term, is going to be online, but then throughout the next year, likely we're going to be going blended online and offline. And that's kind of what the university is going for too, in general. But I do think that by having this blended online and offline approach, actually there's a lot of opportunity to do more things. So there's an opportunity to try things out. They don't cost as much money to do something online. So actually you can try something for very little risk, really. And so that means that if it doesn't work out, oh well, you tried, move on. It didn't cost you a lot. And you try again. And then the other opportunity, of course, is to be able to reach a larger number of young people. So I am going to stop talking, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end, or I'm very happy for you to get in touch with me via email if you want to. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. And thanks, Joe, as well. That was really interesting to hear what you guys have been up to. I am part of Make Happen. We are the regional Uni Connect partnership for Essex. So we work across all of the schools and colleges in Essex in various forms. And we also have staff based at several of the HEIs in the area as well. In terms of our kind of normal working model, we have 10 outreach officers who work across the county, and we have, within each school or college, we have a coordinator that we work with, who we work with to plan a progressive set of events and activities for their students to follow throughout the year. So our progression framework incorporates Gatsby and the New framework as well. Our outreach activity generally is fairly standard. We have a set of workshops that our team are able to deliver. We also work with third-party providers that we fund activity through them as well. We work with students to support them through things like their open days with the student bursaries, for example, and we give them one-to-one support with that, as well as financial funding activities, supporting staff members and things like our summer schools as well. So obviously our model previously was very dependent on face-to-face delivery, and clearly that was no longer possible for us when obviously all of the schools went into lockdown. So we had to think about how exactly we were going to engage our coordinators within the schools and colleges, as well as the students in the kind of new online arena. The first thing we did was look at transferring our bank of workshops online. So we set up Google Classrooms for each workshop and had to break it down to make sure that it was accessible for students and engaging, rather than just an hour of someone talking at them on a video. So our officers worked really quickly to put those together. They were really awesome, and so we could share those. We also had to get our third-party providers to go back through our procurement system again, because obviously their offering had changed, and we had to think about how we were going to be able to work with them online. All of that happened within 4 weeks, and we were actually, when lockdown happened, we were in the middle of delivering one of our progressive programs, FutureReady, which is in the FE colleges in Essex. One of the great things, and we had some really good success with people engaging with the kind of online portion of it. One of the really successful things was that we had some really engaged and supportive tutors who really pushed the students to engage with the online work. So we found that was really the success there, because they had their tutors checking on them and making sure that they were actually participating in the programme. So that was actually really, really great. Once we developed our offering, one of the issues was that we didn't know how we were going to actually let people know that all of this stuff was available to them. Normally we have a teacher conference every year where we get all of our coordinators together, and we like to kind of try and talk to them about widening participation and what we can offer them. So essentially we had to put that online and do it a little bit earlier than we'd previously planned. And we got our third-party providers involved as well, and they did presentations about what it was that they could offer. And then we had some breakout rooms for them to also, for the coordinators to talk directly to the third-party providers. We also used a participant poll during the session to see which coordinators were interested in which activities, and then we could kind of follow that up afterwards. There is a recording available online of that if anyone is interested in looking at exactly what we do offer online. We had really positive feedback from the people that attended that, and one of the great things as well was that we had some increased interest from some people who hadn't previously really been engaged in what we were doing, so that was really, really positive and a great way to kind of showcase what we were able to do. In terms of academic support, we normally work with MyTutor anyway, which is great, and we know that students have some great results with that, so we wanted to continue offering that. We funded some additional students to actually go through the MyTutor programme as a result of lockdown, obviously to support them with their academic goals and make sure that they weren't missing out on the teaching. Another thing we really looked at and have focused on is working with parents, because obviously now parents are homeschooling their children. Essentially, they're having to support them and be much more involved in the education than they probably previously were. So we've been running a series of webinars to actually upskill the parents and carers, so that they've actually got the students have got their support at home, rather than just kind of trying to wade through everything by themselves. Our parent and carer support was really inspired by the success of our coordinator webinar that we held, but also Sun had a fantastic CPD session on parental engagement, so I think that's just goes to show how important it is that we're all kind of sharing ideas and helping each other out, because without that we might not have gone down this route. So we've covered a few different topics so far with our webinars. So we kind of started off focusing on motivating and reassuring the parents. Because of the success of that, we then put on some other ones as well. We weren't really sure if anything was going to work, and as I'm sure everyone is feeling a bit like that at the moment. So we've then gone into looking at how they can have a positive relationship with their child, and actually talk to them, have some positive conversations. It's quite obviously an anxious and stressful time, lots of change. And I'm sure that sometimes, communicating with teenagers can be a little bit difficult sometimes. So we found that that was really, really helpful to our parents. As a result of the feedback of that, we then put on a session about learning and memory techniques to really help them support their child's studies in a much more kind of focused way. And so, yeah, we just held that very recently. So just some tips and advice that we've kind of picked up through the sessions that we have done. We found it really good to have multiple times and days available. So we tend to do one morning slot and one evening slot to hopefully suit everyone's needs. We've also gone down the route of paid social media advertising, which we hadn't previously done before. And that has been one of the main ways that we've actually recruited people to our events. Parents with the younger children have been much more engaged, particularly kind of year 7, year 8, who we wouldn't normally work with. But we have had a bit of a range of parents, but mainly the kind of younger groups. The revision session that we held, the idea was that parents and their child came along as well, and that didn't go quite so well in terms of attendance. It might have been that maybe they weren't so keen to attend alongside the parents. In terms of improving student confidence and aspirations, we do address that through the Google Classrooms that we've set up. So the workshops that we offer cover the kind of normal spectrum of sessions that I'm sure a lot of you also offer out. We had realised that a lot of those sessions were really aimed at the year 10s and the year 12s, and certainly a lot of the schools were really interested in supporting those 2 year groups. So what we actually did was we've split ourselves into some working groups to try and be a bit more creative, think about how we can engage our students a little bit better, particularly in some of the other year groups. One of the main challenges we have is that our access to our students is pretty much through our schools and colleges. Unfortunately, we don't have a programme similar to what Joe was talking about, where we kind of have direct access. It's all done through the schools and colleges. So we've set up some working groups to try and kind of overcome that barrier. So we today, in fact, held a student, it was our first student webinar. So our other ones have all been aimed at parents, or obviously the Google Classrooms have been done through the schools and colleges. It sounds like it was a great success. It literally finished just before this one, but I had a little quick chat with the person running it, and we had 37 students attend, and we've got another session tomorrow. To be honest, we were a little bit surprised. We didn't really know if students would turn up on their own free will, particularly with it kind of heading towards the summer holidays now. But we were really, really, really pleased to have those 37 students attend, and to kind of talk about motivation, how to overcome adversity, and how to kind of make sure you'll keep working towards your goals, even though people aren't able to be at school and things at the moment. We've also put in place some challenges for some Year 9 students to get involved in, so some fun activities that are all about kind of related to HE, but some things to keep them busy and get them to learn about some stuff kind of independently. So that's ongoing at the moment. The end of this week, we've got a Year 11 transition webinar. So that is looking at supporting students moving into post-16, whether they're going to college or whether they're going to sixth form. So that's on Friday this week. And then we've got a few things running for Year 13s. So looking at actually supporting their well-being. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment. Going to university at the best of times is often a huge change to people's lives. And obviously at the moment, it's even bigger. So we've got a 2-part workshop that we are running to help support those students, which we're really excited about. And also we've got a results day session that we are running for them as well. So all of these have been done through Zoom, and we've promoted them all via social media, as well as our website and our newsletters as well. So some of the kind of success and challenges that we've kind of had, just trying to share some of the kind of key learning points that we've had. So in terms of marketing and recruitment for events, we knew there were all these students out there who needed some support, but we didn't really know how to get to them. As I mentioned, we rely on the coordinators. A lot of the things we do are on a class level or year groups. So we weren't really sure how we're actually going to get to our students. A lot of the coordinators were obviously, understandably, very busy trying to figure out how they were going to move all of their teaching content online, how they were going to support their students on a kind of day-to-day level. They weren't necessarily thinking about what those students were going to be doing in a few years' time. It was kind of everyone's in the present moment, which, as I said, completely understandable. But obviously we still wanted to work with students, and we knew that there was still something that we could do to help. As I mentioned, we've really gone down the social media path. It wasn't something that we had really done until now. So it's been quite a steep learning curve. I spoke to another Uni Connect partnership up in Cumbria, who was super, super helpful. Adam was great and gave me loads of tips, which was fantastic. So yeah, we've gone down the paid advertising route, and all of the recruitment that we've had has pretty much been through that paid advertising that we've done, or organic views and reach on Facebook mainly. We've also developed a monthly newsletter that we're sending out to our coordinators. So we know that they're probably getting bombarded with lots of emails, particularly internally within their schools and colleges, about what's going on. So we've kind of condensed all of our information and activities into one monthly newsletter. So it's a little bit clearer and less overwhelming for them, and hopefully they'll engage a little bit better as well. Evaluation has been a massive challenge for us. As you can imagine, we haven't had a huge amount of returns on our post-event evaluations. So we've had to think about how we can kind of overcome that. We are collecting as much data as we possibly can up front. we're making sure that obviously we have a little look at how many people are participating during the event, and also sending reminders and talking to them during sessions about filling in evaluation forms after the event. But it's an ongoing challenge that we are just trying our best to kind of navigate ourselves around. We overall have had over 700 students participate in all of the different activities that we've done. So that includes things like our MyTutor and some other bits and pieces we've been doing, which we're really, really proud of. We've had over 110 parents and carers get involved as well in our activities, which is definitely something that has been a little bit new for us. We have done some support with them in the past, and we did run a parent and carer conference last year, but this really has been a new activity really for us, which I think we will definitely continue with. In terms of kind of how we're going to move forward in the future, we're doing some planning around that at the moment, but from what the schools and colleges have told us, a lot of them are planning, particularly the colleges, to not be on site in September, and definitely not keen on having visitors, which obviously makes our job very, very difficult. So we are planning to continue an online offer, certainly. We've obviously had some success with that as well, and I think we would like to continue with that. I think it's been a real chance for us to be creative and try some different things that we haven't done before, and as I said, we have had some success with that as well. But I think really we just kind of have thrown everything at it and seen what sticks, and as I said, we've kind of had some surprising results where we didn't necessarily think we would have some interest, which has been really, really positive to see. So yeah, my kind of top tips are talk to other people in your area, what's going on, how are they managing it, learn from them. Like I said, you know, social media was completely new to us, so that was really helpful to talk to someone else about it. And yeah, we're kind of going to continue with our online offer as well. But yeah, happy to have any questions. If anyone's got anything they'd like to ask, please feel free to get in touch, or obviously the Q&A at the end. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Natalie. That was great as well. Lovely to see those presentations. And so Lauren's been busy gathering up the questions that you guys have been asking throughout the Q&A. And so we're now going to put a few of those to you guys, if that's all right. And I think we've got about 15 minutes for it, so hopefully we can get through a fair few. Lauren, do you want to take us through some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Joe and Natalie. That was just really, really interesting, and there's tons of questions that people have asked, unsurprisingly, off the back of that. So I'm going to start off with Joe. A question for you. Are you incentivizing any of the weekly challenges over the summer to try and increase engagement? How much engagement are you anticipating from students?
It's a good question. We're not incentivizing other than as part of the program. So it's, as I said, it's kind of called Passport to Your Future. So there's a challenge a week, and each one is related to a skill, and then they get a stamp for that skill in their passport. So they're trying to complete the passport, which is kind of incentivizing in itself. At the end, it's possible that we might have kind of like a prize giving for people with the most stamps, that sort of thing. But we're not going out yet with an incentive in mind. I think we're in a slightly different position to like Uni Connect consortia, because these are students who applied to come on our summer school, so they're already engaged, if that makes sense. So they were going to be with us for a couple of days on an intense activity, and we're just rebadging it, I suppose. We're just redesigning the way that they engage with us, but they are already wanting to engage. So that's, I think, slightly less of an issue for us. In terms of what engagement we're anticipating, we don't know, and so we're kind of taking it on a week by week basis. So we haven't kind of, we've sort of high level planned every week's challenge, but we haven't put lots and lots of effort or time into it yet until we know what they engage with, so that we're able to be flexible and respond to the way that they engage, I think. And then of course, we've only been running it for 2 weeks, so, and we've already had some engagement, but we're looking, one of our plans for next week is to kind of get on the phones send text messages, make sure that everybody can engage, that they know what they're supposed to be doing, are there any questions, those sort of things. So we're able to have that kind of ongoing relationship because they've already engaged with us.
That makes perfect sense. And so one for you, Natalie, which was a pretty popular question. This was from Kim from the University of Portsmouth. She's wondering about the levels of school / student engagement with using Google Classrooms. Did this work for schools who aren't using Google as their main classroom online delivery in school?
So yeah, there's definitely been a few challenges with that. We have had some schools and colleges that have got on board. So all of the FutureReady stuff was put online onto the Google Classrooms. So that worked really well. We've had a couple of issues where some schools' servers, their IT won't let the Google Classrooms kind of function. I think we will probably look at seeing if we can transfer. I know some schools use Microsoft Teams and kind of some other similar things. So yeah, that definitely, we didn't have a huge uptake on the Google Classrooms, which is why we kind of then have diversified a little bit. Yeah, it hasn't been massive, but one of the good things as well is that students can still access it of their own accord if we kind of publish it elsewhere on our website, for example. But yeah, it wasn't, that was it was our initial idea. It was kind of the most obvious thing to just put everything that we already had online, but I think as well at the time a lot of schools and colleges were obviously trying to find their own way through this situation, and worried about their day-to-day teaching, and we are kind of like a bonus on top of that for them. So it wasn't as popular as we would have hoped, but there was some schools and colleges really did use it.
Okay, and if I could go back to Jo then, so there is a question here around safeguarding issues. So Nicola Kennedy was wondering, how have you resolved child protection and safeguarding issues with online one-to-one sessions with your post-16 groups? This is still something we are struggling with, even with older age groups. And that was quite a popular one.
I think the majority of our one-to-one, it's not really, sometimes it's one-to-one because that's the only person that comes at that time. It's kind of like a drop-in session, but that's the majority with our undergraduate students who are over 18. So the safeguarding issues aren't as complex there. Obviously, we're all trained in safeguarding and all of that sort of thing. And obviously there are safeguarding issues around undergraduate students, but it's not the same as like an under 18. And so the way that we've engaged with them tends to be through like live chat text rather than like face-to-face video. And I would say we're not engaging with them at the same kind of volume as we are with the undergraduate, or it doesn't seem the same because it's not face-to-face. But as I said, like a lot of our work is done with programs, so there's students that know us and we have like essentially an ongoing relationship. They're part of the community. So a lot of my work, for example, is answering emails from students just on an ad hoc basis about generic advice that could come like student finance, or sometimes it's like immigration, and I never know the answers and I have to find the answers. So we tend to do it just not in a face-to-face way to avoid that the safeguarding thing. And then obviously if it's done in like a live chat or via email, there's a record of it.
Right, yeah, no, that's all really clear. Okay, so I've got another question here for Natalie. So people are wondering about the parental engagement that you've had with your online sessions. I know that you touched on a couple of the things that you've done around that, but people were wondering specifically, how did you get parents on board, because they found it a real struggle? And was there a particular platform that you used for those parent webinars?
So the parent webinars have all been done by Zoom. Everything we do is Zoom. The University of Essex has that as their kind of approved provider. So we've stuck with that. In terms of getting the parents involved, it's mainly just come through social media. We do advertise all of our sign-ups for our events via Eventbrite. So obviously that does kind of then put us on the events in your local area type page. But we have been doing paid advertising on social media. Facebook, from kind of my limited knowledge, as I said, I'm kind of a little bit new to all of this, but learning very quickly. Facebook tends to be where parents and carers are. So we've focused our efforts on publishing our events on there. So we have an events page. I've been posting, doing all sorts of things. Please come and check out our Facebook page, and we're always happy to share things as well. So yeah, we've really just kind of put everything onto our Facebook, and we've also done paid promotions as well, so boosting posts and event pages. I've also been in contact fairly unsuccessfully with our partners, so literally just messaging them on Facebook Messenger saying, you know, hi, this is who I am, and this is, you know, if it would be really great if you could share this post. Only a couple of them actually ended up doing it. I've been tagging schools and colleges in the posts that we've been doing, and that has had a little bit of success as well. I think really we might need to become a little bit more sophisticated about how we're tracking where our parents are coming from, so that we can then really focus our efforts a little bit more. But yeah, as I said, we've just been putting a little bit of money behind posts, boosting those, old videos as well. For the third party providers, we've been asking them to do a video, just a short clip about the workshop that they're going to be running, why people should sign up. Those seem to get loads of views, so I would definitely recommend a video with someone's face on it, kind of talking about the event, and that seems to have worked really, really well in terms of kind of the numbers of people that watch it and things. But yeah, it's been a bit of just trial and error on Facebook essentially.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. I'm sure people will appreciate that. Okay, so another one for Joe I've got here. This is quite a complex one, but how do you balance the wants and needs of schools and what you can do? We've loved the idea of having self-guided work that students could access in their own time and repeatedly at their own pace. However, schools have asked for things to be classroom-like, wanting to know how long things take and having lesson plan guidance. How are you balancing the opportunities presented with what schools want to replicate?
I think, again, that possibly comes down to the way that we're working. So we don't really work through schools that much. We work with students who have engaged with us. Obviously, we do work with schools generally in the normal world. And certainly we go out to schools and deliver talks and things like that, but that's not really been our focus in terms of during this period, partly because we know that schools are really just focusing on their day-to-day core business, like trying to get that working. So we know that we're just an added extra, that's kind of just not high on their priority list at the moment. So we've kind of retreated to a degree from schools so as not to bombard them, but obviously we just let them know what's happening so that they can engage if they want to. So we don't tend to have that situation of, oh, a school has asked us to put on a session and it needs to be in this hour for, like, in a classroom type session. We don't really have that issue, because we're tending to work with students who want to take part in something. So we don't really have that tension, to be honest. So I can't answer it. I don't know how you'd get over that. I think it's super difficult at the moment because we know that what we're doing is really valuable, or what we can offer is really valuable, but it's just not a priority for schools at the moment. And so I think we just have to accept that and try to make things available, and just, we can't push our agenda where it's not going to fit, if that makes sense. I think we just have to accept that it is how it is, and to try to have those try to be kind of a resource that students can access, and things that like Natalie was talking about going on social media, and Facebook, you're right, is where the parents are at. That's probably the best way to engage with learners. I think we have to, I think we've kind of made the decision, probably not explicitly, but in the way that we've acted, that the schools are not going to be able to facilitate our work like they normally would. So we're just not pushing that, basically. Not a very good answer, sorry.
No, I think that's you definitely covered it there. I might just ask another quick one for you, Joe. There was a question here around community building, and Natalie, if you've got a sort of answer on this as well, like feel free to chip in. But the question was, what work are you doing specifically to build a sense of community between your program students during summer school? I run a scheme called Oxnet, which works in a similar way, and we are trying to find a way to meaningfully build community and social relationships between the participants in our cohorts.
I think that is definitely the biggest challenge with online working. We're working on it, I think, is the best answer I can give. We're just trying things, and I think that's one of the benefits I talked about, is that actually it's quite cheap to try things online compared to like face to face, so things that you can try. So I think I'm right in saying that the Sutton Trust's post-16 summer school, I think they're planning to run like a book club, for example, where students can talk about a specific book, and it just gets them engaging with each other. Things like with our year 10, our first challenge for our year 10 weekly challenges thing that's kind of replaced the summer school is around the theme of networking, but essentially that's a getting to know each other activity. So they've kind of created a poster basically about themselves that they can share with each other so we're hosting most of that on a hidden page on our website, so that it's things like that really. It is definitely the most difficult thing, and it's a real concern for me with Warwick Scholars, where that's a huge part of the programme, and ordinarily at the end of August we'd be having our kind of launch residential, which is where they kind of meet each other, and then they've made really good friendships from that residential throughout the whole of year 13, and we know that's not going to happen in the same way, so we're looking at ways to try to involve that community aspect. So I think what we're going to go down at this point is kind of little and often, kind of regular check-ins and talking about like your likes and dislikes, your hopes and dreams, whatever, and trying to find things that people can kind of hook onto, I suppose, about and meet each other. But with safeguarding, I think it's a super difficult challenge, and I wouldn't like to say that we've cracked it yet, but it's one that's right high up on our agenda at the moment, is trying to work out how to create that community with each other, because we know we can build it with like me as their single point of contact, because we're already seeing quite good engagement like that. But with each other, I don't know that we're going to be able to do that particularly well until we can meet face to face.
Brilliant. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much, both. I think we're out of time now, and so I'm sorry to everyone if we didn't get round to ask your question, but I think that wraps it up for now. So I'm going to hand back over to Rich.
Yeah, and thanks very much for that. As I said, I think it looks like Natalie and Joe, you know, if you're happy to receive other questions, we can always point them in your direction. But thanks very much for both of your presentations today. They were brilliant, and thanks everyone for attending. I hope you found it valuable. Apologies if you submitted a question but couldn't get the chance to have that read out just this time around. So we'll be following up with a recording of the webinar, so you can share it with colleagues or watch it again, or whatever's useful for you. And when you close the webinar window today, you'll also be redirected to a feedback survey. If you can fill it out, it helps us inform whether there's an appetite for more of these, and also you can flag up things like if you want to receive our impact reports and case studies, or a general overview of who we are separately. So that's it, I think, really. Aside from that, thank you, Natalie, thank you, Joe, and thanks, Lauren, for organising. Stay safe and take care in the meantime.